What if I told you that stock picking isn't as hard as it seems? Sometimes it's very obvious, but usually not until hindsight, unless we have the information that we need to know and the bigger picture. In this video, I'll provide 10 of my favorite stock picks for 2024 and beyond that I think have huge upside potential. And this is going to be a blend of stocks from small cap all the way to mega cap. I believe these stock picks could skyrocket, especially the second half of 2024 later this year. I'll also share some mind-blowing facts. For example, did you know that Danny DeVito is 10 billion times larger than an atom? Later, I'll explain why that random stat could make you a lot of money in the stock market. If you're a subscriber to Fired Up Wealth, you know that we've been talking about semiconductors, the new oil, for 4 years now, back in 2020. Semiconductors fuel every secular growth trend imaginable, from artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, cloud computing, autonomous driving, space exploration, sustainable energy, metaverse, cryptocurrency, EVs, and more. Over the last couple of decades, our lives have been digitized exponentially. The phone that you're watching this video on, or TV or computer, the microphone I'm talking to you on, your car, your dishwasher, your microwave, your kids' toys, everything is fueled by semiconductors, the new oil. But not all semiconductors are created equal. Now, early this morning, Taiwan Semiconductor reported earnings, and I want to share some of the highlights, which will explain why I'm so bullish on the 10 stock picks that I cover later. But first, why is Taiwan Semiconductor so important? Well, first, let's look at Taiwan, which is home to 92% of the production of logic semiconductors, whose components are smaller than 10 nanometers. So we talk about different nanometer sizes. That's fitting more processing capacity into a smaller area while also being faster and more energy efficient. And the energy efficient part is very important, especially when you think of data centers and AI. And here's a quick visual of that, just showing you 92% of logic, Taiwan in the purple. Okay, so we know that Taiwan controls 92% of the advanced chips. What about Taiwan Semiconductor specifically? 90% of that 92%. And of course, these advanced chips power everything from your iPhone, your smartphone, artificial intelligence, electric vehicles, fighter jets, and all the secular growth trends that we talk about on this channel all the time. And if these topics are interesting to you, smash that subscribe button right now and click that bell for notifications. All right, so Taiwan Semiconductor beat by 5 cents on earnings, revenue, $19.62 billion. That beat by $50 million. Now, with that said, it's actually negative 1.5% year over year. As you probably are aware, a lot of these comps are tough in semiconductors because of pull-through. And that pull-through really had to do with supply chain disruptions from the pandemic. It was hard to get a hold of chips. And so what businesses did is they stockpiled these chips in their inventories. Of course, you have other things like China, knowing that there was legislation coming, and so buying a bunch of chips in advance before that legislation went through. We're starting to see the other side of that. And later we'll talk about how this piece will combine with several other pieces that could create a perfect storm where the market could rip at the end of 2024. This next part is important. In the fourth quarter, shipments of 3 nanometer accounted for 15% of total wafer revenue. If you're not familiar with Taiwan Semiconductor is a foundry. So what happens is the fabless companies like Nvidia or like Apple with M1 chips and M1 Ultras and all the different M chips, AMD, Marvel Technology, all the different fabless companies. A fabless company essentially creates a design. They don't manufacture the actual chip. They send that design to somebody like Taiwan Semiconductor, and Taiwan Semiconductor manufactures those chips. So the smaller the nanometer, the more advanced the chip. And I'll show you some use cases here in a second. So advanced technologies defined as 7 nanometers. So you got the 7, the 5, the 3, we even have 2. These are considered more advanced technologies. And these accounted for 67% of total wafer revenue. Why is that important? This infographic will help. What I want to focus on is the 7 nanometer and lower. And so you can see these two in the green here. So we're talking about data centers, cloud computing, AI. And then when you get down to the 3 and 5, we're talking about the flagship smartphones, so the most advanced iPhones, high-end GPUs. Now we're talking about Nvidia and AI, autonomous vehicles, AR and VR devices, so the Apple Vision Pro, as well as scientific research and others. So I'm going to start connecting some dots here, and then I'm going to share some stock picks. So overall, the earnings were positive for Taiwan Semiconductor. Chip demand is expected to recover as smartphone and PC makers look to refill their dwindling inventories. We talked about that oversupply and surplus earlier. Smartphones account for 30 to 40% of Taiwan Semiconductor's sales, and Apple is its largest customer. Other customers include Tesla, Nvidia, AMD, and others. Bank of America is expecting 23% revenue growth in 2024, and a lot of this will be driven by those more advanced chips. And Wedbush said that earnings were generally positive on 2024 due to inventory normalization and expected growth across most markets. And Taiwan Semiconductor is really ramping up. Even though you saw that growth at negative 1.5%, its earnings per share estimates have been revised upwards 4 times, while its revenue estimates have seen 21 upward revisions. And one more clip here. TSM is telling us they expect 2024 to be a growth year. And that's from strong ramp up when you look at those advanced technologies. So 3 nanometer, 5 nanometer, and robust AI related demand. As a whole, if Taiwan Semiconductor is doing well, that's generally good news for the semiconductor sector as a whole. Now, of course, you have to look at each individual stock by itself, and you're going to have cyclicality within semiconductors by nature. And so, for example, if you look at automotive, if people aren't buying cars, well, that's going to impact certain names more than others. So we know where the demand is right now, and a lot of that is in AI. Of course, a lot of those stocks have ripped, and they're at all-time highs. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to share 6 stock picks, and then I'm going to share some really interesting facts, and I've got more stock picks later. I'll start with 6 small cap stocks, and later I'm going to cover 4 more stocks. 3 of those actually pay dividends. So if you're looking for larger cap, more established, paying a dividend, I've got you covered. The first stock is ACM Research. Ticker is ACMR. This company has been around for a while, founded in 1998 in Silicon Valley. In a nutshell, what ACM Research does is it provides semiconductor equipment that helps clean wafers. It has other technologies as well, but this is really their specialty, their focus. And you can see right here, special focus on cleaning technologies, and this is the important part for advanced semiconductor devices. Now, we also know that Taiwan Semiconductor is building new foundries. We've got in Arizona, for example, the US with the CHIPS Act. We're pumping a lot of money into semiconductors. Europe also has a CHIPS Act, many other countries, because governments are recognizing that this is the new oil. Semiconductors are the new oil. And it's not that oil is not important. You know, jet planes are still going to fly and going to need oil, right? And a lot of products we use, plastics and so on. But when you think about the future of our global economy, it relies so heavily on technology, and all of it relies back to semiconductors. Now, of course, this is going to have risk because it's a smaller cap stock. It has risk with China exposure. I mean, I guess the question I have is cleaning equipment going to be on the same list as an H100 chip from Nvidia? I mean, certainly our government could put restrictions on ACM, and that's why the stock is priced where it's at. Now, it's had a nice run here recently because they revised earnings, and I do own this stock. In fact, everything I covered today, I do own some shares. Now, with all the stocks that I covered today, I've got more information, more videos. Make sure you subscribe, explore some other videos. The second stock is SiTime, ticker is SITM, another small cap semiconductor name, and this deals with precision timing. So think of MEMS technology. What's really exciting about SiTime is that it covers so many different secular trends. So they're putting these chips into rockets that are going into outer space. We had somebody come on the channel and tell us that, you know, for example, SpaceX is using SiTime and Tesla and other names. This is somebody that supposedly worked for SiTime, but we know SiTime's doing big things with a lot of big customers, including Apple. In fact, I just wanted to double check, but Apple is the largest customer for SiTime. Okay, rapid fire. The third stock is Navitas Semiconductor, ticker NVTS. Their goal is to electrify our world using next-gen power electronics and to enable and accelerate the transition to fast, efficient, clean forms of sustainable energy. This is another exciting small cap semiconductor name. And of course, small caps, they're going to carry more risk reward. So definitely keep that in mind. This is another small company that I think has massive potential, especially when you think of the different secular trends that it's involved with. Now, with that said, this is not a profitable company, and it's expensive. Go look at the price of sales, do some research on it. So these first 6 stocks I cover, they are going to be in the spec basket. some have higher risk than others. The next one, number 4, is Skywater Technology. Now, we interviewed the CEO of Skywater on the channel, and after this video, you can take a look. Now, Skywater is going to be a foundry, so it's a very small foundry. So they're going to help manufacture chip designs. And they have an as-a-service product. I'm telling you, if you want to learn more about this company, that CEO interview will be very, very helpful. So Skywater operates 200 millimeter fabs. So it is going to be much different than the technology used in a smartphone. This company is also involved with several different secular trends. One of these is going to be aerospace and defense, and they have partnerships, they have contracts with the US Department of Defense. There's also money included here with the CHIPS Act. And if you want to learn more about this, definitely check out that CEO interview after this one. This next stock we bought in Discord in 2021, around $30 a share, and the stock absolutely ripped 600, 700% in a couple of years during a bear market. This is one that I did take profits on, and I have house shares of it currently. And this is going to be a semiconductor equipment manufacturer. If you want to understand semiconductors better, I've got a deep dive on the channel that does an industry deep dive on semiconductors. You can also check that video out later after this one. So Axcelis, ticker is ACLS. The vast majority of the business is going to be ion implantation. This is a crucial step in semiconductor manufacturing. And the reason why the stock has been popping off is they've pivoted a little bit. They've created some new machines, but their machines are in high demand because of these secular trends. So Axcelis is benefiting from various growth drivers, such as artificial intelligence, cloud computing, 5G, Internet of Things, EV, and more. In case you were wondering what that acronym was at the end, Advanced Driver Assistance Systems. So think of self-parking, changing lanes, and so on. And if you are familiar with Indie Semiconductor, this is also a focus for them. Speaking of Indie Semiconductor, here we are. So this is going to be focused on automotive. And I do want to note that stocks like Indie Semiconductor, even Axcelis, because Axcelis does a lot in the EV space, those businesses could be impacted more, like I mentioned earlier, if automotive has a slowdown. Semiconductors are cyclical by nature, and different segments within that industry are also cyclical in their own nature, depending on what's going on, of course. If everybody's buying smartphones, well, certain companies are going to do better than others. If nobody's buying a car, well, it could impact, something like an Indie Semiconductor. But this is a pure play automotive fabless semiconductor company. So again, they're going to design chips, and they're going to send those off to a foundry to get manufactured. And you probably know Indie has been very active in M&A, so mergers and acquisitions, and they're really trying to build out a world-class, best-of-breed fabless semiconductor company that's focused on automotive. So not just electric vehicles, not just autonomous, but when you think of cars in general, if you go back 20 years ago, it's much different than today. In the future of cars, as we get more technology baked into these cars, you need more and more chips. Now, I also interviewed the CEO of Indie Semiconductor, and you can watch that video. It'll give you a lot of great information about this company as well. So that's 6 small cap semiconductor stocks that I own in my portfolio. These are long-term investments. I'm thinking 5 or more years out. These will have volatility, but I do think that there's a great chance towards the end of the year, especially, that you could see names like this much higher than they are now. And I'll share my predictions for the market in 2024 later in the video. I'm also going to share 4 more stock picks. 3 of those pay dividends. In fact, I'm going to share another 2 stock picks that are going to be bonus picks. So there are a total of 12 stocks that I own in the semiconductor sector. So we just covered 6 stock picks, and I'm going to cover 6 more for a total of 12. Now, before we do that, I want to get back to these advanced chips. I'm going to share some mind-boggling data that will really get your brain going. And ultimately, it's going to help you make money in the stock market, especially if you're a long-term investor. Why do we care about the size of Danny DeVito compared to an atom or the sun? Why does it matter? I'll explain. Okay, so nanometer chips, especially those under 10 nanometers, they're revolutionizing the semiconductor industry. Why? Performance, speed, energy efficiency. And of course, they're used for the advanced products we talked about earlier, especially when you think of smartphones, artificial intelligence, and so on. I'm kind of a history nerd, and I've been following the semiconductor industry for a couple decades, 20 years. I've been investing for 25 years in the stock market. And if you look at transistors, the sizes have gotten smaller and smaller, exponentially smaller. Initially 10,000 nanometers in 1971 to a standard of just 5 in 2020. And now you're seeing, 2 nanometers, nanometers and you're talking about 1 nanometers, you see different articles out there. It's essentially a circuit of connected transistors, and they're smaller than the eye can even detect. So the smaller the transistors, the more that can fit on a chip. The smaller the chip, the more that can fit on a wafer. It increases efficiency a lot, and the weight and the size, everything. And so if you really understand this technology, I mean, it's really a push towards sustainability at the same time. Yeah, sure, these data centers use an enormous amount of energy, but by making these smaller and faster and more efficient, by replacing those chips, it's actually doing a lot of good. And at the end of the day, it's not going away. I mean, we're not going back to on-prem. There are situations where people have on-prem, but when you think of the secular growth trends, the new oil, semiconductors, and really cloud services tie into those. And so if you look at my portfolio, the majority of what I own is going to be connected to semiconductors and software in some capacity. And this isn't to scale or anything, but just to show you from the 70s to today, 2022 on this infographic, we've gotten smaller and smaller and smaller. We just keep pushing the envelope smaller. In fact, maybe you've read about this. IBM has a 2 nanometer chip technology, 50 billion transistors, each the size of roughly 5 atoms. And this is on a space that's no larger than your fingernail. And I've got a big fingernail. I don't know about the size of yours, but this is crazy if you think about it. 50 billion transistors on your fingernail. And this is why computing power is getting faster and faster, and why AI is what it is today. We didn't have the technology even 5-10 years ago that we have today. And this is why I get so geeked up about technology. And it's why you could make so much money in the tech space if you just understand it and you connect the dots. Okay, here's the Danny DeVito part. It will make sense, I promise. So on a scale of the smallest to the largest things that we can see in the solar system, we sit pretty much dead middle, or Danny DeVito does at least. At 1.50 meters, he's about 10 billion times bigger than one atom and 1 billion times smaller than the sun. This visual is just to help you understand how small an atom is, first of all, and then you think of the transistors in that. So going back to this, 2 nanometer, okay, that's 50 billion transistors, the size of 5 atoms. And Danny DeVito is 10 billion times larger than a single atom. Here's another good way to explain it. So look at this infographic here. You've got the moon, you've got a penny, and you've got an atom. The size of that penny compared to the moon is about the same size as a hydrogen atom compared to a penny. So think about that. A moon to a penny to an atom. This is a mind-blowing stat right here. So the diameter of an atom is about 0.1 to 0.5 nanometers, which is about 100,000 times smaller than the width of one of your hairs, one human hair. A single drop of water contains billions of atoms, and a single grain of salt contains millions of atoms. A single grain of salt. Why am I sharing this? Number one, it's cool information. I love stats like this. I love data. I'm a nerd. I love this kind of stuff. But number two, if you understand that this is advanced technology, you're not just going to start up a company in your basement and go compete with Nvidia. And as a growth investor, this type of information is going to help you be a better investor. And ultimately, that's my goal. I want to help you be a better investor. Growth investing requires much more than just quantitative analysis. Quantitative analysis is like, okay, I'm going to look at the P ratio. I'm going to look at the financials. Everything's black and white. Check the box. Yes, if you're a value investor, you're laser focused on the financials, on the quantitative analysis. If you want to be a growth investor, it requires stock picking. And it's going to require a combination of not only that quantitative analysis, but also qualitative analysis. In other words, intangibles that aren't easily measured. And in order to do that, you can't just study one company. You have to understand the entire secular trend, the global markets, how things work, the direction of where we're headed as a human race. And a lot of this, it's hard to teach. It's intuition, and it's just lots of experience. Now it doesn't make me any smarter, but just my background, I've always been into technology. I've got an undergrad in international business, so studying global markets. And then I've got a master's in business administration. And I've been, studying the market for years and years. I've been investing for 25 years. So we try to teach not only just here's the stock ABC, there's so much more in that picture, the bigger picture, and you have to connect all those dots. And if you understand the technologies and the trends, it's going to make it a lot simpler for you to find stock picks to buy to profit from in the stock market. So if you're looking for larger cap stocks in the semiconductor space, there's a few here that even pay dividends, much more established companies. They're going to be easier to identify in terms of that quantitative analysis. They've got P ratios and so on. Lam Research would be a good name for you to explore. Now, Lam Research is essentially, it's a semiconductor equipment manufacturer. It's one of the most well-known names. You think of the top four, Lam Research is going to be in that conversation with Applied Materials, KLA, Tokyo Electron. I mean, you get the idea. ASML is going to be in there, but it's a little bit different. But Lam Research, ticker LRCX. Broadcom's another one I've owned for years. This is a great one. So when you think of Lam Research, that's semiconductor equipment. Now, Broadcom, if you're looking at AI specifically, this is a very blended company. There's a lot going on, especially there's different acquisitions in the history. They deal with software. They acquired CA Tech, and about some recent acquisitions like VMware. So really, this is going to be very broad. So data center, networking, software, broadband, wireless storage, all kinds of different things. But the reason the stock has really ripped recently is because this is going to help create the fabric for AI. In other words, connecting the different data centers and servers and supercomputers together. And this does pay a dividend as well, the ticker AVGO. The next one here is Marvell Technology, ticker MRVL. Now, this is going to be another one that pays a dividend. I consider this a DJF. It's a smaller dividend. And this is going to be a diversified company, but it has gotten some popularity recently from AI. So they're getting more into automotive as well, but you can look at connectivity, networking, storage, semiconductor design. They even do some of the data centers and things like that. So this is a smaller player, but it's a company that I do like that you could explore. Now, everybody knows this name, AMD. And AMD is getting a lot of buzz, especially around AI. A lot of people have the mindset, well, Nvidia has ripped so hard. What's the next one? AMD. And I am long AMD. I do believe in AMD as a long-term investment. This stock has ripped. So earlier we covered some smaller cap stocks. Might be better opportunities, versus some of these that maybe are too expensive. It's really up to you and how it fits into your blueprint. But AMD is getting more involved. As you know, Nvidia, did the pivot. I went long Nvidia in 2018. The whole story, bought it in the 30s. It's house shares now. But Nvidia really pivoted more into that data center. And you think now of AI. And AMD is definitely pushing to that more as well. And so you can do a lot of homework on this, GPUs and CPUs. AMD, usually you think of AMD as a CPU, getting more and more, when you think of the Xilinx acquisition, getting more and more involved with data center and servers and AI. And then the big differentiator for NVIDIA, of course, is the software as a service model. AMD is starting to do a lot of that as well. I think you have to be careful maybe chasing this stock, but I do believe in it long term. Okay, so that was 10 stocks, but I've got two more because obviously you know that Nvidia is my top pick. And I just mentioned I've been long in it since 2018, house shares. That's been my favorite stock pick since we started the channel in 2019. It's been one that I've been very bullish on. I've always had high conviction in. Of course, now the stock's pretty expensive. And so it's a bonus pick because I do think the company is going to continue to do well. I think the stock price is probably going over $600, but you do have to be careful chasing, and any little thing like an earnings miss, the stock could get crushed. All right, I've got one more stock pick. I've got a bonus stock pick. Before I do that, do you want more information about semiconductors? Do you want more information about these stocks? Because if you do, there are a ton of other videos on the YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe, click that bell for notifications. And if you want to take it even further, we have a Discord that we started nearly 4 years ago that you can join today for free, absolutely free, 7-day free trial. You can mine through 4 years of information, including tons of research on semiconductors, as well as exclusive videos and write-ups and podcasts, all absolutely free for 1 week, no strings attached. Visit patreon.com/firedupwealth. All right, so I'm in the middle of editing and I'm getting through it. I'm like, I forgot to put that part in explaining why I thought the market was going to do well at the end of 2024. Now, of course, with anything, no one's got a crystal ball, but here's the thing. So the reason the market ripped the end of 2023, everybody's excited because the Fed's going to cut rates. Now we're starting to question that. Well, maybe the Fed's not going to cut 6 times. Maybe they won't start cutting in March. Maybe they'll get pushed back. CPI comes a little hotter than expected. Jobs market's still strong. We don't have all the information, but assuming that those things improve, it's January right now. Assuming that CPI, even if it does have a little bit of a spike up for a little while, if it starts to come down, if the Fed starts to cut rates, it's also an election year. You've got Taiwan Semiconductor telling us that things are good. It's going to be a growth year. You're hearing a lot of positive things from specific companies. Now, there are select names that are going to be more cyclical in nature or impacted a different way from geopolitics, or it could be from just the macro overall. And we're in earnings season right now. So again, we don't have that data either. If all the mega cap tech companies come out and say things are really gloomy, well, you know what can happen. But assuming that the earnings come in and that they deliver, especially in the back half of this year, if the Fed starts cutting rates, you also have an election year, and you also have $6 trillion, $6 trillion on the sidelines in money markets, which is a record. I'm not a gambling man or anything like that, and I'm investing long. So I'm not really even worried about 6 and 12 months. I'm thinking 6 and 12 years. But if I were a gambling man, I would say that there's a decent chance if those things happen, the stars align, that you could see a powerful run the end of the year. I said even December, I think the end of 2024, the market will be higher, but it will be a bumpy ride along the way. And I do expect the second half of 2024 to be positive. And of course, the data has got to come in to support that. And I do think that small caps could benefit, small and mid caps could benefit, especially if these larger companies, the mega cap techs and so on, the steam starts to come out of those and people say, okay, it's safe to invest in some of these smaller cap, these spec stocks and so on. You could see a lot of those names rip. And so that's why I think that these could have explosive moves towards the end of the year, but there is no guarantee and it's not financial advice. Now, the last pick here, number 12, is going to be ASML. And another way to play this space is you can also invest in a semiconductor ETF. The two that I like are SOXX, SOXX, or SMH. So I covered 6 small cap stocks. Those are going to carry higher risk, higher reward. Oftentimes we call spec 10x or 0, and really a blend of stocks from very small companies to huge companies like Nvidia, the largest company in the semiconductor space. There are many other names that I do like in the sector. There are names that I'm researching that I'm hoping to buy very soon. These are the 12 stocks that I own in my primary taxable brokerage. It's a $1.7 million account, and it is a decent percentage of the portfolio. So hopefully this video helped you with some ideas today. There are plenty of other great names in the semiconductor space for you to explore. As always, do your own homework and make your own decisions. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, click the bell for notifications, drop me a like, drop me a comment. Have a great rest of your day. Take care.